diving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Raw Recovery with Dion Miller. Today, I have a special guest, Kat. It was really neat how I met Kat. Sometimes we need to be open-minded about our recovery, and we never really know where God's going to say, hey, go this direction, go that direction. We don't know where it's going to come from. And somebody made a suggestion to me I was looking for a new home group. Somebody made a suggestion to me that said, Dion, go to this group. And I'm like, what do you know? And I ended up loving this group. I made it my home group. And, it has been a long time since I was actually excited getting up in the morning and being like, I'm going to an AA meeting today. I get to see my friends. And with all this Zoom stuff going on and disconnection and everything, this group's fantastic, and it's got some great sobriety in it. I'm not going to tell you where it's at because it's all mine, but with that, I'm going to introduce my new friend Kat. Kat, welcome to Raw Recovery, and thank you so much for being on our show.
Oh, thank you, Dion, for having me.
Certainly.
It was kind of funny the way I got introduced to the group. I was in one of my other groups, and one of the girls from the noon group happened to be there, and she texted me, and I was sharing, mind you, and she texted me, would you speak at our group? And it was a first for me, speaking over Zoom. How weird is that? And it was so cool because I live 300 or 400 miles away from there, and I got to be a guest speaker and never left the farm.
Yeah. And that's pretty neat about Zoom. It's, and thank you, Zoom, for making it still affordable and not raising your prices and doing all this stuff so we can still continue to connect. And I think it shows willingness when we're okay, let's get on Zoom, let's try this. Because if it wasn't for Zoom, I don't know that I would have ever met you.
True. And where you live is my old stomping ground, so I was afraid to move back there early on. And so this way I get to know sober people, safe people.
Yeah.
So that when I do go and visit there, I'm able to have good grounded connections.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom is awesome for people with health issues, such as myself, people that can't get out and make meetings but really need meetings.
Yeah.
So it's been a godsend in so many ways.
And it's been really important, I think, for our community because we're still able to do things like this, come on and tell our stories. And I think stories are very important because it's what brings people together. That's how we connect, is by realizing that you lived a life, maybe not exactly like me, but a lot like me, where I thought I was alone. So without further ado, I'm gonna give you the floor, Kat. I'm really excited to hear your story. So I'm going to be quiet for a little while.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity.
Certainly.
To share my story, so people anywhere in the world can hear it. I'd like to connect with. I started drinking when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
My father was in the service.
Okay.
And he used to have poker games on the weekend. And I used to toddle around the table, and everybody thought it was cute, a little kid, letting them sip the bourbon and cokes. And so, my whole life, from as early a memory as I have, there was always alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was an only child.
Okay.
So right off the bat, the world evolved around me.
Oh yeah.
You know, I was self-centered from to the extreme, and self will run riot right from the beginning.
Wow. Okay.
Um, I lost my mother a month after my 14th birthday,
Oh man.
and that was devastating because she was my best friend.
Yeah.
She never drank, but my father was an alcoholic, and I can remember um, times that were so extreme. And I remember overhearing one time some relatives saying that if anything ever happened to my father, it would kill my mother. And my unhealthy way of learning how to deal with life started out early because I remember my parents fought really hard one time, and that was in the back of my head, and I wanted to rescue them. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
make things perfect.
Yeah.
So I went to our basement stairs and I tucked my head and I rolled down the stairs
Wow.
because I knew I was the center of their world and it
Yep.
would bring them back together.
Yeah.
So my father always wanted a son. I was raised as a boy,
Okay.
and so when I lost my mom, my whole world just crumbled. She was my ground, she was my connection to God. She had raised me in Sunday school and church.
Okay.
Um, so about, I remember when my mother died, my father, I had been sick, so I couldn't visit her in the hospital.
Okay.
And my father tells me about 4 or 5 days after she dies, he sits me on his lap, and he said, "The angels have come and taken your mama away." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "The angels have come and taken your mama away." And it was so devastating. And so my father started bringing me home TJ Swan, if you remember that it's rot gut wine, kind of
Mm.
like Mad Dog 2020,
Yep.
and let me have just as much as I wanted to numb my pain. So I learned
Mm-hmm.
really quickly that that's what you do when you hurt. You stuff those feelings behind alcohol.
Yep.
And then I remember one night I woke up to him sexually abusing me. And so the very next day, I ran away.
Okay.
I never finished I went to 2 weeks of the ninth grade and dropped out.
Okay.
Mind you, I got my GED a year early.
Yeah.
But the first man I met was the biggest acid dealer in Anchorage, Alaska. And, he was another father figure for me.
Okay.
And he taught me how to do drugs. And so my life, was always partying and not feeling. And I developed this complex where if everything wasn't happy around me, then I would kick you to the curb without
Mm-hmm.
any feeling bad or caring
Yep.
because I was looking to be happy. That's all I wanted to be after my mom died. I had to find ways to be happy, and not feel that anguish, that pain. And so my whole life growing up and early adulthood was that way. You know, the wreckage of my past is so deep and long and full of a lot of pain for others.
Yeah.
I never stuck around. I lost two children in the process.
Wow.
My disease was more important than my children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was very painful. When I was I was married 6 times,
Okay.
and twice to the same idiot. But you know, I I gave up um, my daughter because of an abusive marriage.
Okay.
And then I relocated. That was my thing. I was a gypsy.
Okay.
I was a gypsy all over, my solution was to run and to look for fun. And when you wore out your usefulness to me, then I
Mm-hmm.
moved on.
Poof.
When the
Gone.
drugs and the alcohol were gone, I went and found somebody that had the drugs and the
That's
alcohol.
right. No longer
You
of any
know,
use.
exactly. And when my daughter was 2 years old when I gave her up. 7 years, 11 days later, I got pregnant with my son. I had my son, and I was determined not to lose him. And I remember him looking up at me when he was about 8 years old, and he said, "Mommy, I like you better when you're sober."
Ooh,
So
ouch.
I did the best that I could at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a meeting, and I met this guy that was 14 years sober, and I immediately married him. You know, that was my thing. The reason I've been married so many times is because I was raised that you don't live with a guy.
Mm.
Those old fashioned things.
Yep.
And you know, I, but if I happen to wake up with somebody I didn't know beside me in my bed, well, mistakes happen. I don't remember it. It's their fault. They
That's
got me
right.
too drunk, right? So I managed to stay sober for 5 years,
Wow.
um, by my son's request, and I
Okay.
can't really call it sobriety.
Yeah.
It was it was dry. I went to many meetings with him all the time. We were in meetings.
Okay.
I got good at the book knowledge, and I
Mm-hmm.
brought into uh, I can't really call it recovery. I brought into the meetings because
Okay.
life was just a game to me.
Yeah.
All the manipulation and the conning and the survival skills that I had learned on the streets, I brought that into the relationship with me. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to play a good game.
Yep.
I knew how to be whatever I needed to be for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I could be high class, I could be gutter trash, I could be anything in between.
Yep.
Whatever the role was called for, then I could play that part.
Yep.
And so I studied this book, and I could talk a good game, and I was in and out of meetings, and everybody thought my life was just perfect, and inside I was so miserable. I was so miserable. I
Yeah.
never got a sponsor. I never worked the steps.
Yep.
I was so superficial, you know. And there came a point in our relationship where things went haywire, and my son had always wanted to smoke some pot.
Okay.
And I'll tell you the story. It's not a pretty picture for me.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
that he was 13, and I had always told him when he was 13 he could smoke a joint, because that's the age I was when I first smoked a joint. And so he came to me when he was 13. He was my little drummer boy. I had bought him a drum set. That was his dream in life. Um, and he's like, "Okay, Mom, I want to smoke a joint." And his sister had come back into my life
Okay.
a few years earlier than that, and I was trying to raise both of them.
Okay.
And she their birthdays were 7 days, 11 days, were 11 days apart.
Okay.
7 years, 11 days. So what I did is I rolled a Cheech and Chong joint,
Uh,
and I let her have it on her birthday, and they could smoke it the whole time.
okay.
Well, unbeknownst to me, because of her insecurities and jealousies and her disease, um, she was real jealous and she wanted me
Yeah.
all to herself.
Okay.
And so she went to the school and she ratted me out.
Yep.
And so they took my son away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was crushed.
Yeah.
Now I didn't know at the time it was her fault, but I talked to CPS and I said, well, what if I'm not here? What if I leave state? They said everything would be okay. So I left. I
Okay.
did what came natural.
Yeah.
And of
Ran.
course, when I left, I started drinking and doing drugs all over again. And I found out from a letter from them a few months later, um, because they have to list who it is that talks against you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it
You
that
have to know
she
your accuser. Yep.
exactly, and I found out it was her, and so I blew up and kicked her to the curb. Told her I never wanted to see her again,
Yep.
and and for years I didn't see her. For the next, oh, it took me 34 years of drinking and drugging,
Yeah.
and before I got a phone call from her one day saying she was dying, and could I come to Colorado to be with
Okay.
her. Now my daughter had learned my game really well from me.
Sure, she did. Yeah, she learned from the best.
Exactly. And so when I got here, I found myself on the street corner. She's saying, Mom, I need some medicine. So I gave her money. And she left me on the street corner and said, and she went and got what she needed and came back. And I wanted so bad to believe her. And as a matter of fact, I have been published in a book that tells about that story,
Wow. Okay.
which is really cool.
That is really
It's
cool.
well, it's so that other parents can
Yeah.
recognize signs
And learn.
of
Yeah, that's how we learn
behavior.
by from mistakes. Exactly.
Yes, and from hearing what has happened with other people, the
Exactly.
purpose
Yeah.
of telling our experience, strength, and hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, um, short story long, um, uh, she's in a nursing home now and will be for forever.
Okay.
She doesn't speak to me because I no longer am her enabler. um, and let's see. I'll fast forward to I was in and out of. I've never been in a rehab,
Okay.
but I was on the streets in between because I got on Social Security,
Okay.
um, and I had to buy my drugs and alcohol, so it was easier to be on the streets,
Oh yeah.
And
Right.
being a gypsy and camping out most of my life,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really bother me. But my partner in life, which is my dog, I've had since he was born. Um, he started getting old, and his feet would freeze in the snow in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to do something for him. Mind you, I never ever planned on getting clean and sober again because of the shame and the guilt, and I
Yep.
just and you guys were just too easy to con back in the day
Yeah.
that I knew that most of y'all must have been conning me too,
Yep.
you know. And it's like nobody could love me or accept me. You know, I didn't even like myself. How could you guys
Mm-hmm.
like me? So I went into a shelter, a woman's shelter, for a little while to get his feet um, off the streets. And then my time ran out, so they put me back. Ended up going back on the streets. A
Mm-hmm.
friend I had met felt sorry for me and let me come stay at her house for a little while on her sofa. Well, I took advantage of that, of course. While she was at work, I was slamming dope
Mm-hmm.
and I was staying drunk, and it all quit working for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't getting high off the dope.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't because of the dope. I could drink more than so much more, and the drinking just wasn't cutting it. So, I was like in limbo.
Yeah.
So I just sat in the bathroom one day and just kept doing shot after shot of dope and guzzling. My drink of choice was Wild Turkey 101.
Okay.
And the next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital
Spit on. Yeah.
and my dog's across my feet. Thank
Wow.
God, that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't lose my dog. We'd never
Mm-hmm.
been separated, and he was 15 at the time, and he'd never been to jail. That's one thing is he managed, because of him, I managed not to get busted and go to jail. Now before him, I went to jail plenty of times, but he he was across my feet. They came in and they didn't know if I was going to live or die. My liver was trying to shut down on me.
Yep.
Um, I had overdosed and had alcohol poisoning at the same time,
Okay.
which is a
Can
really
can I
wild.
ask how old you were at this time?
Yeah, I was, well, I just turned 59, so I was 55,
Okay.
not
Okay.
going on 56.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to put a time
Yeah,
reference in there.
right. My sobriety date is July 18th, 2017.
Okay.
So that was the last time I was to ever drink or use any drugs.
Wow.
Um, they told me about a place called Fort Lyon, um, out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. Love Fort
And
Lyon.
yes, and they said it was up to a 2-year program.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't tell me anything about the drinking and drug side of it.
Yeah.
They told me that Fort Lyon would provide a safe place to get me and my dog off the streets,
Mm-hmm.
and they would help me get into my own place.
Mm-hmm.
They would help me establish housing.
Yep.
And that's all they told me.
Yep.
They
Because
said I couldn't drink or use drugs while I was there,
exactly. Yeah.
but
Because
that's all they said.
yeah, Fort Lyon is a housing first company. So exactly. What a
Yeah,
great
it's,
trick.
yes, exactly. You know, I knew it was a sober community, which
Okay.
at that point I was so dead inside, and the
Yeah.
only thing that mattered was my dog.
Yeah.
I was so relieved he was there, and I had stopped caring about me. I can't remember when, but it was so far back. Um,
If ever.
yeah, if ever, because I always live life on the edge.
Yeah. Since you were
Uh,
4.
yes,
Huh?
exactly. I never knew what being sober was.
No.
I knew what being dry was, and that was absolutely miserable. And
Horrible.
how people, how people managed it,
Yeah, I don't know how
and
you did it for 5 years. Wow.
yeah, and everybody around me kept pretending like they were happy, joyous, and free,
Stupid
you know,
fuckers.
and they wanted me to get somebody and tell them about myself and work these steps, and it's like, are you
Uh-huh.
guys nuts? It's none of your business.
Yeah. Don't you
It's
know who I am?
exactly. And I blow your mind if you knew what I've been through and what I've done. It's like there's no way I'm gonna tell anybody. You only think you like me now, you'll really hate me after that. And and plus I had lied so much to my husband, he thought I was um, poor, abused, neglected. Everybody always taking advantage of me, and
Mhm.
he didn't know that I was the center of my world, and I was the one that was manipulating and conning, and
Yep.
so and I was not a nice person, but
Okay.
I made everybody think I was totally awesome,
Yeah.
but they couldn't see in my heart. And so I agreed to go to this place called Fort Lyon.
Okay.
And I remember getting on that bus. After 3 days in the hospital, they poured me into this van.
Mhm.
And I had no clue where I was headed. And so we drove and we drove and we drove and then we drove some more,
Yep.
and they turned off this old highway onto an even older highway and drove another 2 hours. And it
Yep.
was like, where are these people taking me? And all these crazy thoughts are in my head.
Mhm.
They're taking me to some commune, or they're taking me to
Yeah.
some government facility. They're going to use me as a guinea pig.
Mhm.
Because, just because I didn't have anything in my system for 3 days, I was far from clear headed.
Oh yeah. It would take
So,
months. It's going to take another couple of
yes.
months at least.
Well, it took 30 days just to defog from the
Yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah.
And then the drugs took quite a while after that,
Yeah.
also.
60, 90
But
days.
they get to the fort and they go through all my stuff. They search all my stuff.
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, I'm still not knowing what's going on. I
Yeah.
got to sign all these papers, and it was really crazy. But it was, it was a relief too.
Yeah.
The fort is absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
It's gorgeous,
It
and
is.
I actually I fell in love with it at first sight.
Aw.
Um, and I got there, and I went to the Winds and Storm, and lo and behold, one of my partying buddies, she was there. She'd been there a few months already,
Yep.
and it was like way cool, So I wasn't alone.
We're laughing
She
because we know
looked,
what happens, guys. So, but
yeah, what, she looked so good.
yeah.
She looked absolutely beautiful. She was clean. Her hair was shiny. She was happy, and I was like, "Wow, what is going on here?"
Yeah.
Are they putting something in the food?
Yeah. Because I
I
want
didn't know.
it.
Yeah, are you getting cleaner dope here? Or,
Are you on
um,
Jesus or something?
right, And so, about a month after I'd been there, I started defogging some. But my girlfriend, she she was playing the game,
Okay.
but it was a facade.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the real deal. And so I went out to the smoking area one night, and she was there drunk off as a skunk.
Oh
And she
man.
was diabetic, you know.
Okay. Uh, uh,
And uh, I helped her get back to her room. It's like somebody's going to see you and report you, you're going to get drunk, stay in your room type thing.
yeah.
Um, but she wasn't, and she get to be a mean drunk, but she trusted me, so she was about to get in a fight with one of the other girls, and she let me get her upstairs, which she was like dead weight.
Yep.
And I'll never forget. I got upstairs, and there were like 4 or 5 empty bottles of vanilla extract
Oh.
in her room. And she was going in and out of being able to breathe and not being able to breathe. And I finally, one of my other friends knocked on the door, and I said, "Go get security."
Yeah.
Because we people with diabetes all my life, I have felt closest to. I have true compassion for, because that's what my mom died from.
Okay.
And so I was so scared for her, and I didn't want to lose her like I'd lost my mom.
Yeah.
And so we got security in there, and we got her to the hospital, and she was okay. And then they gave her a chance. They give everyone that relapses
Hmm.
their second chance.
Yeah.
They said
Fort
you
Lyon
could go
doesn't
to
give
the
up on their people. No, they don't.
no,
That's
not
why I
at
love
all.
them.
Yes, and they allowed her to go to this what's it called, where you go dry out for 30 days.
Detox.
Detox. Yes, I've never been in one of those, so I don't know.
Good for you.
Well, yeah, yeah, I I I didn't want to drink, or I didn't
Mm,
want to give up drinking. So why would I go to a detox?
yeah.
um, and I always had some man to take care of me, so
Hmm.
that I didn't have to go to one of those facilities. And so much of my life I camped out in the woods so I could get away with doing whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But she came back, and they told her she'd have to be on room restriction for 10 days. And then,
Okay.
it was okay.
Fair enough.
Um, and when she came back, because what they do is for 3 days, they kept her to detox her.
Hmm.
They brought her back, and then she had to go for 30 days.
Yeah.
But it would be 10 days room detention until they could get her into the 30-day program.
Yep.
She chose not to take it,
Hmm.
and she chose to go back to Denver instead.
Hmm.
Um, January of last year, she died on the streets.
No. Sorry.
She had been on the streets with her son. Her son was found frozen in front of the liquor store, dead, about 3 months earlier.
Oh my
This is
God.
this is our disease,
It is our disease.
This
Yeah.
is our disease. This is what our disease gets us. Um, good times were gone so long ago.
Yeah.
Yet I always thought I could recapture them. That's why I always wanted everybody to be happy and joyous around me.
Yeah.
And if they couldn't, it made me real angry, and I'd have to go somewhere else.
Hmm.
It's like, don't you know we're supposed to be having a good time?
Yeah.
And I was always the party girl,
Hmm.
and I was always the mystery girl, because no one ever knew where I came from or where I disappeared to. Uh, it was, I lived a very crazy life that way. But it was so hollow and unsatisfying.
Yeah.
There's
We
that
we
song, "Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places." That was
no,
me.
that song has been brought up more than once in my podcast.
I bet it has.
Yeah. It's probably the third time it's been brought up. And yeah, and that is our life, and it's true. Our disease runs through, and it can kill other people, and it can. I've seen it happen.
And you know what? It doesn't kill, it destroys.
Yeah.
My daughter became a drug addict and an alcoholic. My son became a drug addict and an alcoholic. My son tried to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I destroyed so many men's lives when they would no longer play my game,
Yeah.
and I'd blow them off. And they
Mm-hmm.
really loved me, which to me, love wasn't nothing. because I didn't know how to love.
Exactly. We know we were
and,
never
and
we've never known that feeling.
yeah, I didn't know how to reciprocate their love.
Yep.
I knew how to control them. My life was all about, well, it's like the big book tells us about. I was the director, and I was, directing this play and putting all the actors where I thought they should be.
Yep.
And if the performance did not go the way I thought it should go, then I would leave. I'd go get
Mm-hmm.
another cast somewhere and redirect them then.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew who or what I was supposed to be anyway.
Yeah.
The disease is so totally debilitating, and it wants to just. It's like these fires that we get that break out from a lightning strike or
Mm-hmm.
somebody throwing out a cigarette butt or whatever.
Yep.
And it starts with just a little ember, and the next thing you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's a full-blown blaze that everybody's battling to get under control. And
Mm-hmm.
all these people that get hurt trying to control it and trying to put out that fire, that's kind of like my life was.
Yeah. Yeah.
People trying to help me tamp down. And, oh man, I can't tell you how many people have tried to help me in the past.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
it's like, I don't need help. What are you nuts? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
I never got the hint.
Yeah.
And
But there's something that happened in that hospital bed that
yeah,
gave you the willingness to do something about it, or you would have never made it to Fort Lyon. There was willingness in there.
yes, back up just a little bit. I stayed at this. I don't know if I can say names. Can I say names of
Sure.
facilities?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. I stayed at the Samaritan House for a while
Sure.
when I was in the women's club.
Okay.
The people at Jesus Saves they'd kick us out at 7 in the morning.
Yep.
And then I would go to Jesus Saves and hang out there when it was in the middle of the winter.
Mm-hmm.
My dog, his paws would start freezing trying to get across the street. I remember one day he collapsed and the securities come running out and they're like, "Can we help you?" And I'm like, "Yes, grab my stuff." And it was during the time everybody was standing outside and you couldn't go in. And
Mm-hmm.
I picked my dog up and they let me go inside, and this is the old side of it, and they had this
Mm-hmm.
little old fashioned heater, and I sat
Yep.
there and they let me thaw my dog out. And you know but I crashed in the middle of one of the worst snowstorms. There's that big glass building
Yeah.
catty cornered from them.
Mm-hmm.
Crashed in their doorways
Yeah.
more than once with a blanket over me and my dog's head.
That's because there's some
You know?
heaters. There's some heaters that blow over there, or
No,
something.
no. There
'Cause-
was absolutely nothing. I used my
Okay.
dog for heat.
Because
You know.
I stayed in the Phoenix concept for a year, which is right across the street from where you're talking about, and there were
Right.
always people in those doors. I know which doorways you're talking about.
Yeah. And I had a cop come by one night, and he's like, they were picking people up. It was so cold, and taking them to jail or
Mhm.
shelters to keep them from freezing to death. And he got too close to me, and my dog went off.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, I guess you'll be okay for the night. I'll let the
Yeah.
other people know." And the police were always so nice. They
Yeah.
really were. And they let me be. Well, after that, it was like, I can't take this anymore. So I
Yeah.
applied to the Samaritan House to actually live inside there in their
Yep.
dorm, women's dorm.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew me so well that one person, the security guard, put in a recommendation for me.
Aw.
And so I got in,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in that program. It's only a 3-month program. Um, and my time was up, and and I wasn't going to meetings,
Okay.
but I was sober and
Okay.
clean at the time because they do, they use the breathalyzer things all the time,
Yep.
and they do spot UAs for
Mm-hmm.
drugs. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't get thrown out because we're in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
So, but then my time was up, and I had nowhere to go back out on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was talking about earlier that uh, when I was on the streets and that my friend let me stay with her for a couple of weeks.
Okay, that's how that. So that's right before you went into the
Right,
hospital. Got it. Okay.
right. And so when I woke up in the hospital, I'd only been doing the drugs and the alcohol again for 2 weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
I had picked up from that 3 months clean and sober. I had picked up when I picked back up and started drinking and drugging. I mean, I was like, I had a tolerance that was unreal,
Yeah.
and none of it worked for me.
Yep.
So I just ingested as much as I could, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why it took me down so much
Yeah.
faster. And so I remember in the hospital, deep down inside, I wanted to be clean and sober again because I was actually um, learning compassion and being helpful and of service at the Samaritan House.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually how I managed to be sober, because I was being of service, helping other people out.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize any connection to the program or sobriety at that time.
Certainly.
Um, but I
And
knew
and
I,
and I'm just gonna intercept real quick. You
yes.
guys can't see this, but as soon as she started talking about that, her eyes just lit up, guys, and it was like a yellow aura going around her. So it's something spiritual happened. I just wanted to interject that because um, it was very pertinent. Go ahead, Kat. I'm sorry.
you know, um, I never, I never had the problem with the concept of God because, like I said, my mother raised me in church and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And all through my life, I think one of the reasons I was so cocky and lived on the edge is because God always rescued me.
Mm-hmm.
I can see all through my life where He rescued me when I should have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I always believed in that little footprints thing, that when there was just the one set of footprints, it's when God was carrying me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always believed in that concept, but I just couldn't imagine a God that could love me after all that. I
After
kind of felt
everything I
like,
did. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I kind of figured it was like His job to take care of me, because
Mm-hmm.
He's our creator. But
Yeah.
but as far as you know, yeah, I was all messed up. And so when I came to in that hospital, um, that was the closest I ever came to being physically dead because of the drugs and alcohol,
Yep.
as opposed to me just putting myself in a bad situation where I should have been dead.
Exactly.
And so, when I got to the fort, I was all for this being clean and sober. That
That is
didn't bother
awesome.
me, but I still hadn't connected with the 12 steps or
Yeah.
AA or meetings or anything like
Yeah.
that. I was living just on the euphoria of being alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Grass
I
is
was in
green. I'm smelling things again. Yeah.
I didn't die, and I was living on that gratitude of not having died, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the back of my head, I'm also my subconscious is reminding me of when I had 5 years before, and how miserable it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know that it doesn't last. That life kicks in and it just all goes to hell in a handbasket.
Yep.
You know, and then I saw my girlfriend go through that with her diabetes, and relapsing at the fort, and then going back to Denver, and her disease got her so fast, and she died. And it was like, wow. And I got a new roommate, and she used to pester me to death. Come on, let's go to a meeting. Let's go to a meeting. And she
Yeah.
did that. I guess I had 3 months sober, and I finally agreed. All right, I'll go. Just to
Fine.
shut
Just
her
get
up.
off my butt.
Exactly. Just to shut her up. And I remember walking over to the meeting, and everything started coming back to me. The As far as what was written in the big book and the steps and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a big difference is when I went to AA 34 years before that.
Hmm.
It was the people I saw in the groups weren't street people.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm. I do
they
know.
were right. They were what do you call it? They
They're
weren't
upper class.
middle. They were
Yeah,
middle
middle
class and
class
upper
people. Yeah.
class.
Yeah.
And
I'm a Skid
I
Row
had
drunk
been
too, so I know.
right. And I had been living on the streets for the last 20 years solid,
Yeah.
camping out. You know,
Hmm.
and so I was street people through and through.
Yep.
You know, and when I went into the meeting at Fort Lyon, these were all street people, and they were laughing, cutting up,
Mm-hmm.
and they were. I could I could believe their happiness to be
Mm-hmm.
real. The years before, when I had been at the other AA group, I thought that it was all a facade.
Mm-hmm.
That they were all lying.
Yeah.
They were secretly drinking, and that's why they were happy. I really couldn't connect to them. I came into the meetings at Fort Lyon, and I instantly made a connection because these are people that I partied with out on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Only, and they were still just as crazy and obnoxious,
Yeah.
but they weren't drinking or using any drugs.
Yeah.
And I tell you, when I first got into rooms, I really thought people were sneaking stuff in,
Sure.
and that this couldn't be real. But I was what I was the one that the big book calls a hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
Page
hope.
21 drunk.
Yes, and I I I oh I was the one that it talks about the person that grabs a life preserver because they're drowning.
Yeah.
Seizes the life preserving as a drowning man does. That was the desperation I felt. I was so desperate to get whatever it was that y'all had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, please, I'll do anything.
Yep.
And it was for the first time in my life. In the hospital, I had surrendered.
Yep.
That was where I had changed.
Yep.
That was my first spiritual experience.
Yep. The
I had
psychic change. Love it.
I had
Love it.
surrendered
Yeah.
100%, and it made me willing. I knew I was powerless over my disease. My whole life proved it.
Yeah.
I knew my whole life was unmanageable, obviously.
You don't get to Fort Lyon because everything's going good.
Right, exactly. And so the first thing I did was start taking suggestions.
Yeah.
I got a big book. They gave me a big book. They gave me a 12 and 12. I went to the NA meetings. I got an NA
Mm.
book. I got everything I
Yep.
could get my hands on. And then I got an AA sponsor,
Yep.
and I did exactly what I was suggested to me. The first thing I learned about was acceptance is the answer and freedom from bondage. They're my two favorite stories in the big book.
Yeah.
One's on page four, starts on page 417. Acceptance is the answer,
Yep.
and freedom from bondage is page 544. And acceptance is the answer taught me to accept things without expectations.
Mm.
And I have a paper that sits in front of me on my living room, and I look at it all throughout the day. It says, I must keep my magic magnifying mind on my acceptance and off my expectations, for my
Hmm.
serenity is directly proportional to my level of acceptance.
Absolutely.
And, that's what the first step is all about.
Uh-huh.
And there's the puppy. And then freedom from bondage taught me that in moments that if I didn't feel willing, it doesn't necessarily have to be about resentments, although that
Mm-hmm.
particular story is. I could apply prayer, I could pray to be willing to be willing,
Yep.
you know, and it didn't matter what the situation was,
Yeah.
and it would work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I I got to the first step. I had no problem with the second step because I had been doing the same thing over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
expecting different results all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I was insane.
Yep.
you know,
And we can
and
laugh at that today. That's what's,
oh yes,
yeah.
I can. The reason I can laugh about it is because I survived.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am a survivor. I'm not a victim of my past.
Correct.
And so therefore I can laugh, and I have the true happy, joyous, and free that I had looked for all my life through drinking
Mm-hmm.
and drugs.
Yeah.
And then um, I remember every day when I from the hospital I had started. When I from the moment I woke up, all I prayed was help,
Yeah.
help. That was the only prayer I
It was the
knew.
only thing left.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd get ready to crash at night, and I'd say,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I don't really know what I was saying, help me with, or what I was saying, thank you for.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just so grateful to be alive. And so I got to tell you my third step, which is really really awesome.
Awesome.
When the Fort Lyon where we have our meetings
Uh-huh.
is the old visitation from when it used to be a prison.
Okay.
It's a building that they use for visitors to come and visit the inmates.
Okay.
How appropriate, right?
Yeah.
So after the meeting on a Sunday, my sponsor and I did my third step. We went into one of the little visitation rooms, just a little bitty cubicle,
Yeah.
and we got on our knees in that little visitation room, and I did my third step prayer. And that will always stay with me. It was just so appropriate,
Yeah.
you know. And so I vigilantly, I got to my fourth step, and I was going to be as fearless and thorough as I could. And one thing I want to share with your audience, with people, um, please don't get discouraged if your first sponsor isn't what you're seeking or hoping for. My first sponsor had a tendency to talk. She shared things with her boyfriend about me that I was telling her.
Okay.
And when they had gotten in a fight, he was sitting outside one day after the meeting, and he started telling me all these personal things about my life.
Ooh.
And so I could have easily um, gotten a resentment,
Yeah,
and I'm sure I did to a degree. Um, but I could have easily gone out and gotten drunk at them,
sure.
you know,
Yeah.
to show them, or whatever. And but I didn't. I
Yep.
was seeing a therapist each week,
Yep.
and the big book tells me that be quick to see where clergymen and
Yep.
psychiatrists and all of them can be a
Absolutely.
pebble,
Yeah.
you know. So I did my fifth step with my therapist. You know,
Fantastic. What a great
it
idea. What
was
a fantastic idea. It's your
it was
comfort level that matters in it. It really is.
well, you have to feel safe,
And yeah, and be
you
able to
know.
trust that person. Yes.
Right.
And it
And I
says right in
knew
the big book to utilize those people.
and I knew because of the law she couldn't repeat what I told her.
Exactly.
You
Thank
know.
you, HIPAA.
So yes, exactly. And right after that, I immediately got another sponsor,
Yeah.
you know, which
Yeah.
was cool. Um, and I, you know, I did my seventh or my sixth and seventh step. Um, you know, what I learned from that was that my character defects, when I look them up and I look up the spiritual principles, there's a
Mm-hmm.
spiritual principle which is the exact opposite of any of my character defects, you
Okay.
know? And so when in step seven, when I asked God to remove my shortcomings, I immediately learned that He wasn't going to go, poof, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't work that way. But because I was clean and sober, which is the number one key,
Yep.
I have a choice today.
Mm-hmm.
And because of doing the other steps in order prior to that, I have an awareness now
Yeah.
of what my defects of character are.
Yep.
So God gives me that choice when one of them rears their ugly heads. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, do you want me to take that from you? Like you asked me? I'll give you a spiritual principle to apply to it instead,
Exactly.
you know. Or I can choose to be miserable and wallow in that defective character as long as I want to,
Certainly.
you know. And that's the glory of being sober. And you know, there's a part of the big book, the into action at the end of it. It says these things happen sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, that's in the ninth step promises.
Yeah.
At the end of the ninth step promises, and it says the miracles happen sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And for me, they all happen relatively quickly, but I think it's because of the quality of the sobriety I was seeking.
Correct.
You know, it's not a matter of the quantity. You can have 20 years, or
Yep.
you can say, for example, you can have 5 years like I did and
Uh-huh.
be just as miserable as the first day,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be have 1 year and be happy, joyous, and free if you do what is suggested and you want it more than anything. If you have that desperation,
Yeah.
I have been blessed because today that desperation has turned into passion. You know,
Exactly.
because of the steps and doing what was suggested, making a list of all the people I had harmed and becoming willing to make amends. That wasn't so difficult. But
Okay.
then to make direct amends to such
Mm.
people in the ninth step was a little bit more of a challenge.
Sure.
And but then again, all I have to do is hit my knees and pray for that willingness to be
Mm-hmm.
willing, you know. And I always have to remember that I don't want to be honest and upfront and trying to make amends at the expense of somebody else's feelings.
Correct.
You know, if it's going to injure them or others, then I just put it on my living amends list.
That's correct.
You
You know,
know.
and that's the neat thing about recovery is once that obsession is gone, we get to make critical choices like that.
Yes.
We become different people, and yeah, maybe a character defect pops up, but instead of focusing on it now, I can utilize that to educate other people and help them out, and be a part of that. um and that's what's so neat, is it just, recovery is just about feeding itself constantly and just doing the next right thing. And if we're open-minded enough, we're going to hear the answers. We'll know what we need to do next. And even now, I know that you do a lot. I know that you do a lot of 12-step work. You're constantly involved in the group, and so what are a lot of the things that you're doing now to stay sober?
Oh, service work, service. You know, I started doing service work without expecting anything in return, without
Mm-hmm.
expecting blessings. Just and the blessings I get back. I mean, that is where my joy comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I I went to my therapist and I was all excited and I read the 9 step promises to her and she's like, "Well, those have already started happening in your life, haven't
Yeah.
they?"
Yeah.
Well, because I couldn't see it myself, and it's like, yes,
Yeah.
they have.
We're usually the
And
last person to see something in
yes,
ourselves. So.
and I want your audience to know um those aren't the only miracles. There's
Mm-hmm.
miracles all throughout.
Yep.
And when you hit that 12th step, you know, which means you practice these principles in all your affairs, which means to the best of your ability,
Yes,
you
we're
know,
all human.
exactly. And you give it away, and that's now my position is to give away what's been freely given to me. And it doesn't matter if you're on step one.
Mm-hmm.
Being of service will get you through all of those steps where you don't get caught up in the poor me or
Mm-hmm.
in the blaming game.
Yeah.
People in their first step, I used to make coffee all the time,
Yep.
you know,
Pouring
and
coffee.
then the more sobriety I got and the further I got in my steps, I would chair the meetings. I've been a
Mm-hmm.
treasurer. I've been the secretary. I'm the chair now at a group conscience.
Yep.
You know, when I left Fort Lyon, when I graduated, um, my spiritual awakening was just such a beautiful epiphany. And when I left Fort Lyon, I tell you this, I wanted to live across the street from where I live.
Okay.
And this is how God works in my life. I had filled out an application. Well, the lady at Fort Lyon calls me into her office and says, "We sent the application to the wrong place."
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh, bummer." Well, this place that we sent the application to called me up and said, your name's at the top of the list and we'll have
Wow.
an apartment for you soon. I said, "I don't want it." It's okay. I sent it to you guys by accident. I want to move in across the street. And so the very next week, she calls me back and she says, "We have an apartment for you to look at. Come see." It's like I hadn't told her I didn't want it at all. And I'm like, "Okay, God, what's going on here?"
How many
You
times
know,
must I hit you with this 2x4?
right? Here's, and he's gently reminding me who's in control, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, "Okay, I'll come look at it." And so the lady from the fort brought me out here to look at it. I walked into this, it's a corner apartment with this huge, beautiful yard, corner
Mm-hmm.
yard, perfect for my dog. I walk in, I've got a front window that sees the sunrise, and my living room and bedroom, it's a one bedroom, has the beautiful sunshine of the day and everything, but it's coming at me at an angle so it doesn't get that hot.
Yeah.
And it's a huge window. And I walk in and there's zillions of cabinets in the kitchen. And I love cooking. It's got an actual bathtub.
Yep.
You know, it's got a pantry. It's got so many things. And I just was stunned. And
Yeah.
of course, I immediately said, I'll take it. Thank you, God. And then I
Yep.
moved into the place in Fort Lyon. I want you to know, provided me with furniture to fill it up,
Yep.
and dishes and
Yep.
sheets and towels and the whole shebang. And I moved into the place, and and the longer the longer I live here, the more perfect I
Mhm.
see how it is for me. All the little things that God has added that mean that I didn't even think of that mean
Yeah.
so much, you know. So by allowing the steps to work me now on a daily basis, um, God just fills my life full of blessings.
Mm-hmm.
I was very afraid when I moved in here because I was afraid being alone.
Yep.
I might
Mm-hmm.
and so I immediately got a couple of voluntary positions.
Mm-hmm.
And since being of service, it doesn't mean that you have to be of service completely in the program.
Mm-hmm.
I went and volunteered at the food pantry, you know.
Well, and we kind of go by a motto, you and I, and that is when anyone,
Yeah.
anywhere reaches out for help, I want the hand of AA to be there. Fine, let's replace it with God then. I want the hand of God to be there. And I'm
Exactly.
responsible for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't say when a drunk is drunk. It doesn't. No,
No.
no. I can be of service to anyone. And what's cool is what I do helps anyone. Everybody goes
Yes.
through anger. I'm working with somebody right now with a 4-step. They're a normie. They never even drank,
Yes.
you know, and it's going to help it, and it will give them that alleviation. So,
You know, I I've always stressed that, just opening a door for somebody at the grocery store is being of service.
yeah,
Just smiling at someone and saying,
mm-hmm,
"Have a nice day."
yeah,
You know, I got a volunteer job, and it just blows me away. Okay, small communities like this always wanted me to leave
yeah,
their town as fast as possible. They never wanted me to stay,
exactly,
and and everybody is so welcoming and loving.
yeah,
I've never known the drug scene or the alcohol scene here, which is a
yeah.
plus. And I got a job. They actually hired me at the library here to do story time with the children.
How fun,
Me.
man. Yeah, me.
It's like, really?
What the?
You know,
You trust me?
hey,
Okay.
with your children, you know.
Alone? No, are you sure?
Yes.
Uh,
It just blows me away, and I, I always, I, I'm known as a safe house around town because I work with other alcoholics and because our big book tells us when all else fails, work with
mhm.
an alcoholic will save the day. And so my house is open for anybody that needs a cup of coffee, you
Cool.
know, that wants to get involved.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, uh, the steps, the program, the fellowship, the passion and God first and foremost has saved my life and made life worth living. You know,
Fantastic.
I give it to Him every morning, and the rest is in His control.
It is. You know,
And then
it's
beautiful things like this happen.
yeah.
You asked me to share with you on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had some beautiful talks, and it's just life is amazing today. It's truly amazing.
It
And
is.
I
And
so appreciate this.
oh, it's another avenue for us to be able to share. And we all have our talents, you know. And God has given me the chance to do this and be a part of. And this is kind of how I do my service work.
It's beautiful.
um, so, but really it's about the speakers. It is. I just get to be a part of the story and part of the ride. And this was a fantastic story. Kat, I appreciate you coming on and letting us know. I really, really like the part, and I think this is kind of what I got out of this was she finally got into a room where people understood where she was coming from. And she was in a room full of bullshitters that weren't bullshitting anymore. And she knew this because, well, we're all bullshitters. You know, but it was that point that took her and made that change for her. She finally saw something in somebody else that she wanted. And that is God working in other people's lives. This person had 30 days of sobriety. So you tell me, how long do you need before you can help somebody else out? I say as long as you need. But I think the biggest part that we can really take from this, guys, and this is why we do the stories, is it doesn't matter how far down you go. Okay. We just listened to somebody with 20, they were living on the streets for 20 years. Okay. And I've known other people like that. And now she's a productive member of society. Okay. That is a miracle in and of itself, let alone the fact that when we first sober up, our miracles consist of brushing our teeth, showering, eating regularly, taking our meds, seeing a doctor. Okay. And once we get past all of that stuff, then we can go into a realm that we call the fourth dimension. And then that's where we live and we stay in the fourth step. Kat, thank you again for being here. I
Oh,
love
thank
that
you,
story,
Kat.
and I love you, honey. Um, and
Oh,
thank you,
I love
everybody, for
you.
being a part of. This has
Yeah.
been Raw Recovery with Dion, special guest Kat.
Thank
And
you.
I hope everybody has a good day. I love y'all. Peace out
A day
and
filled
have a
with
day.
peace. A day filled with peace and serenity.
That's how we'll end it. Bye, guys.